Chosen ones, your life is speaking even when your mouth is quiet. This month's mesmerizing charge has turned your presence into a broadcast. And the question is not whether you will speak, but what kind of grammar you will teach. A living language forms where body and spirit agree on meaning. People don't just hear your words, they read your pace, your gaze, your exits, your returns. If Chapter 5 set your tempo, this chapter sets your tone. Start with vocabulary. Let certain words become furniture. Solid, dependable, within reach in every room. Words like consent, clean, enough, later, and no. These are not barricades. They are bridges that carry truth across turbulent water. When you say consent, you are not invoking policy. You are promising climate. When you say clean, you are not bragging about innocence. You are pledging integrity in the presence of desire. When you say enough, you are rescuing yourself and others from the appetite that eats the seed you were meant to plant. When you say later, you are honoring the future as a person in the room. When you say no, you are curating your yes to be believable. Tone decides whether your language builds a home or a hall of mirrors. Sarcasm might win the laugh, but it mortgages trust. Flattery sounds like hospitality and spends like manipulation. Precision feels plain at first, then becomes a sanctuary because it does not move the furniture while people are sitting down. Speak with a tone that intends relationship after the conversation is over. It will change what you choose to say, and even more, what you choose not to. Pacing is punctuation. Periods are holy. End the message when the truth is whole enough to rest. Commas are mercy. Let breath happen inside hard talks. Colons are invitations. Here's what I mean. Here's what I can offer. Question marks are bridges. What would make this safe for both of us? Exclamation points are rare, because wonder and gratitude can be loud without typography. Ellipses of vague promises have retired. You used them when you feared honesty, and honesty has become your dialect. Your body adds idioms to the language. A turned shoulder opens space for a quiet voice to enter. The room learns inclusion without a memo. An unhurried sip during a heated moment signals that time belongs to truth, not to panic. People's sentences lengthen into accuracy. Hands kept still while someone confesses tell them you are not cataloging leverage. Their spine remembers what dignity feels like. Clothing that celebrates form without selling soul tells the world your body is a person, not a product. Others catch the grammar and start conjugating it onto themselves. This living language is most persuasive when it refuses translation into performance. You are not responsible for making every conviction theatrical. There is power in the private practice of your verbs. Bless, protect, finish, apologize, rest, repair. Use these words as actions so often that your circles begin to repeat them without knowing the origin. One day someone will say in a meeting, "Let's slow for consent," and you will remember a dozen small moments when you did that without saying it out loud. Influence has always been fluent in subtext. Your sentences can carry rescue without carrying people. Notice the difference. Rescue that carries people trains dependency and exhausts everyone. Rescue that carries sentences trains agency and multiplies capacity. Offer phrases that fit in pockets. You're allowed to pause. We can stop here. You don't owe anyone access to stay lovable. Let's put truth on the calendar. Kindness has edges, that's why it's safe. These lines will travel farther than your schedule can. They will show up in rooms you never enter. They will arrive on tongues you've never met. That is language becoming culture. Learn to read dialects without surrendering your own. Some hearts speak the clipped syllables of those who survived by speed. You answer with patience that doesn't punish. Some speak the overbright tones of people who learn to trade wonder for safety. You answer with gentleness that refuses to haggle. Some speak power fluently and intimacy poorly. You answer with standards that keep both from colonizing the other. You are not Mockingbird, you are translator. Translation honors difference without letting difference dishonor dignity. Repair is the grammar test everyone eventually takes. When you misspeak, return without theater. I was wrong. Here is the change. Here is how you'll know it's real. Keep the apology close to the harm, the repair close to the apology, the lesson close to your body so it forms muscle. The mesmerizing person who can repent becomes trustworthy in a way the flawless never could. Your followers do not need an idol. They need a human whose language can survive pressure. Silence remains a word in this language, and it may be the one that surprises the room most. Silence says, "I'm not available for manipulation," without calling anyone a manipulator. Silence says, "I won't put your story on stage," without shaming the courage it took to tell it. Silence says, "I trust that clarity will arrive," and often it does. Make friends with this word, so your other words are not asked to do work that stillness does better. Teach your language to your calendar. Let your hours speak consent by leaving margins. Let your projects speak clean by avoiding deadlines that require contempt to meet. Let your Sabbath say enough to the lie of indispensability. Let your mentoring say later to the temptation to centralize yourself in every solution. When the calendar conjugates the language, people can read it even when they cannot hear you. Finally, let God keep being the lexicon. Bring him the terms you are still learning: beauty, power, longing, holiness, and let him define them beyond the cliches your culture prefers. He has ancient meanings for modern aches. He will hand you synonyms for love that do not bankrupt you: patience, clarity, covenant, play. He will retire words you used as armor, performance, currency, audience. He will give you new ones to memorize by living them: shelter, standard, seed. Walk into your next room, aware that your life is speaking long before you do. Let your language make it easier for others to tell the truth without losing their place. Let it make violence feel out of fashion. Let it make tenderness feel inevitable. And when someone asks why they feel more human around you, answer with a sentence simple enough to remember after they forget your name. I chose words that keep people whole, and then I let my body keep saying them. Chosen one, there is a kind of silence that follows you now, the charged quiet of a room that has already decided you matter before you speak. The eyes do not simply look, they lean. Some are kind and curious, some are hungry and hurried, some are cautious the way a hand hovers above a flame. This is the burden of eyes, and you were not made to carry it as a weight on your spine, but as a mantle on your shoulders. A weight bends, a mantle shapes. The first teaches you to hide, the second trains you to stand. You are learning the topography of visibility. There is the summit, bright and windy, where applause arrives in warm bursts and leaves you chilled the moment it moves on. There are the switchbacks, where a few faithful walk beside you, not to document the ascent, but to keep step. There are the narrow passes where one wrong gesture could send a rumor tumbling. The burden is not simply that you are seen, it is that being seen changes how others tell the truth around you. Words grow careful or careless. Confessions arrive too early or too late. Jokes sharpen into something that auditions for approval. Your task is not to police tone. It is to make tone honest by being honest yourself. When you choose a steady pace over spectacle, the room remembers how to breathe. When you admit a limit without apology, the room remembers that humanity is safer than theater. When you refuse to purchase loyalty with access, the room learns the price of dignity and the gift of boundaries that do not wobble. There is a temptation to curate your way through this, to arrange versions of yourself for every angle. The curated self is easy to admire and hard to trust because it cannot survive in unflattering light. The trusted self is coherent at noon and at midnight. Coherence is a discipline of attention. It asks you to notice when your body becomes a billboard and invite it back into being a bell. It asks you to catch your voice when it drifts towards slogans and return it to sentences that make tomorrow better. It asks you to guard the names you carry, not by hiding them from scrutiny, but by refusing to turn them into currency. You are not an economy, you are a person. Eyes that forget this will try to spend you. Your steady no will teach them to budget differently. The burden of eyes includes the modern liturgy of the lens. Screens make sanctuaries porous. A moment can be stolen, edited, captioned, and sold before it understands itself. Adopt modesty of revelation as a spiritual practice, not because you are ashamed of your glow, but because you honor mystery. Keep holy hours off camera. Let a portion of your laughter belong to rooms that can hold it. Let a portion of your sorrow have the dignity of no audience. When you do appear, let your presence be a witness instead of a performance. A witness that boundary and warmth can share the same seat, that authority can listen before it leads, that beauty can stand without inviting trespass. The eyes will come and go, your witness will remain. There are eyes that accuse without speaking, trained by old injuries to expect harm. Meet them with proportion. Do not over-explain to win their blessing. Do not under-explain to punish their suspicion. Offer clarity that neither flatters nor fights. Clarity is slow mercy. It says, "Here is what I mean," and let silence do the rest. It says, "Here is what I cannot give," and refuses to decorate the sentence with apology confetti. It says, "Here is what is true, even if it is small," and trusts small truths to grow stronger than grand illusions. In time, some suspicions will retire. Others will keep their job because they belong to stories that are not yours to resolve. Bless both with the same evenness and keep walking. There are eyes that adore, and adoration is intoxicating until it becomes a contract you never signed. You will feel the subtle pull to pay for praise with pieces of your privacy, your schedule, your body's sense of safety. The burden is to remain generous without becoming rented. Receive thanks, not demands. Share bread, not backstage. Give instruction, not identity. The ones who truly came to learn will leave with a vocabulary for their own lives. The ones who came to possess will drift when possession is denied. You have not failed them. You have freed them from a story that would have eaten you both. Let the burden become intercession. Pray with your posture for those who cannot yet pray with their mouths. Stand in a way that unhooks shame from shoulders. Sit in a way that makes confession feel less like trial and more like triage. Smile without audition. Frown without threat. Keep your hands unbusy while others speak so they know you are not counting leverage. This is how chosen ones turn attention into shelter, by being so grounded that other souls remember their own ground. You will need a refuge from even good eyes. Make one in time and place, a walk that belongs to nobody's calendar, a chair that does not face a screen, a friendship that refuses to use your name as a pass to the glamorous hallway. Bring the day there and tell the truth. Tell it when praise tasted like permission and you almost sold more than you meant. Tell it when criticism found the bruise you pretended had healed. Tell it when you were brave and clean and quiet and nobody will ever know but you and God. The burden becomes lighter when it is named in a room that does not invoice you for honesty. Finally, remember that eyes cannot keep you. What keeps you is the one who saw you first and loved you before you were mesmerizing to anyone. Let that gaze anchor you when the rest swirl. Let it set your pace so that you do not sprint toward approval or hide from misunderstanding. Let it teach you that the most astonishing thing about being looked at is the chance to look back with kindness, to meet 1,000 projections with a single reality, a person, aligned, alive, faithful enough to be read without being rewritten. Chosen one, energy that is not given work will spend itself on spectacle. Energy that is given work becomes a civilization in miniature. Habits, tools, songs, shelters, policies, prayers, built from the same heat that once only asked to be felt. God did not make you mesmerizing so that you would orbit your own glow. He sent you voltage so that what you touch could carry charge long after the month returns to ordinary light. Creation through energy is the curriculum of this season. Begin with the oldest technology, a vow. A vow turns current into course. Say one that fits in a breath and fits your bones. I will turn desire into building. Let the vow decide small things that become large. The hour you protect for craft when messages multiply. The draft you finish while adrenaline begs for a different kind of reward. The apology you write before the story hardens in someone else's memory. The system you install so your team can breathe at the pace you preach. These are bricks laid by vows. In their shadow, others will rest. Creation at this altitude needs constraints. Unbounded energy floods, bounded energy irrigates. Choose limits as if they were chisels. Limit your palette so color can develop character. Limit your scope so excellence can occur within the fence. Limit your sharing so process can ripen without the sugar high of constant unveiling. You are not starving the world. You are serving it by letting work arrive strong enough to carry the weight of use. When the piece is ready, release it with the humility of a farmer and the confidence of a mason. Here is bread, here is a wall. Let the body collaborate with the making. Walk until rhythm appears and sentences hitch a ride. Stretch until breath remembers its patience and ideas stop demanding sirens. Eat so your mind keeps time. Sleep so your compassion can afford mourning. This is not self-care as slogan. This is craftsmanship of the instrument that is you. A frayed wire shorts the house. A tended wire carries light to rooms you will never enter. Creation through energy will ask you to choose audiences carefully, not for ego, but for efficacy. There are rooms that applaud beginnings, and rooms that steward middles, and rooms that certify ends. Take the work to the room it needs, not the room that flatters most. Let early readers sharpen you instead of soothing you. Let peers ask whether your process is kind to the people who will live inside its outcomes. Let elders tell you where your brilliance is about to spend someone else's future. Let younger voices tell you where habit has hardened into laziness. Nothing you make will be less yours for being refined by many. It will simply be more useful. Turn your energy into verbs that outlast you. Teach so others do not have to pay your tuition again. Document so excellence can be inherited instead of reinvented. Standardize where tenderness depends on someone remembering how. Write policies that make exploitation unfashionable. Compose emails that transform shame into specificity and specificity into action. Draft scripts for difficult conversations that protect both truth and tone. These are quiet artifacts, but they are the architecture of a kinder world. Let generosity become a design principle, not an afterthought. Create in ways that lower thresholds. If your art requires attention, make the attention worth the cost by giving meaning quickly and leaving dignity intact. If your system requires participation, make the participation legible to the tired. If your leadership requires trust, make the trust measurable, small promises kept predictably. Generosity is not simply giving things away. It is arranging reality so more people can do the right thing with less friction. You will know you are designing generously when gratitude sounds less like awe and more like relief. Collaborate in ways that turn magnetism into momentum for many. Invite partners who correct your center of gravity without shaming it. Share credit as a policy, not a performance. Refuse the story in which you are the only light. Build constellations instead. A constellation's beauty is not in the brightness of a single star, but in the lines that guide travelers through dark. Chosen ones who create with others spend less time guarding thrones and more time paving roads. Roads matter more. Beware the counterfeit of productivity that produces artifacts without meaning. Your month is bright. The algorithm will always want more. More posts, more reveals, more cleverness, more angles. Production for its own sake turns energy into noise and noise into numbness. Resist by measuring your work with better instruments. Is the thing truer than when you found it? Does it protect softness without weakening standards? Does it make repair cheaper and harm harder? If not, do not scale it. Creation should lighten the future's load, not decorate the present's hunger. Let lament enter the studio. Real making listens to pain without converting it into content before it can become wisdom. Sit with the ache until it names the specific wrong you are called to address. Then build with that specificity. Write for that reader. Code for that use case. Compose for that night. Paint for that room that cannot afford galleries. Policy for that corridor where power turns left and leaves the quiet to fend for itself. Lament that matures into design is how chosen ones refuse to waste sorrow. Install Sabbath inside the making. Some breakthroughs only visit rested minds. Some mercies only land where emails are closed. Some melodies only trust a throat that spent a day saying nothing. The point of your pause is not recovery from worth. It is remembrance of source. You are not the power plant, only a beautifully wired house. Let the current idle. Let the lights dim. Let the table reset. When you return, you will choose more precisely where to burn. Creation through energy will be tested by imitation. Others will rush to reproduce what you birthed without adopting the discipline that made it safe. Bless what is honest. Correct what is harmful. Release the rest to time. What was made in alignment will endure misreading. What was built by spectacle will need constant rescue. Alignment is slow armor. It will not trend, but it will be there when the wind changes. As the month rounds its corner, take inventory like a craftsperson, not a celebrity. What exists now that did not exist before? What problem got smaller? Whose day became gentler? Which room learned a new rule that protects tenderness? Where did you refuse a shortcut that would have turned a tool into a toy? Where did you finish a thing so someone else could start theirs? List these without fanfare. They are the quiet kilometers that make a pilgrimage instead of a parade. Walk on, chosen ones, with hands that are warm from use rather than from applause. Let energy continue to enter you like weather and leave you like architecture. Let those who step into your orbit find not simply a glow to behold, but a door to open, a table to sit at, a sentence to carry, a map to follow. When they ask what fueled such building, give them the simplest answer that does not hide the miracle. The fire came, and I gave it work. Chosen one, contrast is the quiet miracle of your month. It is not a performance of opposites, but a revelation of substance. The way granite feels underfoot after miles of sand, the way clear water tastes when a tongue accustomed to syrup finally meets a river. God has made you mesmerizing not to thicken the fog of fascination, but to cut a window through it. In the world's vocabulary, attraction is often a siren. In the language you are learning, it is a sign. The difference, this sacred contrast, is what people sense when they step near your life and find that their appetite is welcomed and also taught, that their longing is seen and also stewarded, that their hunger is met and also given a table where dignity heads the meal. Sacred contrast begins inside, long before any audience arrives. It is born where the body's fire meets the soul's vow. When your energy rises, you do not fear it as a traitor or worship it as a god. You befriend it as strength entrusted to a keeper. The keeper's first act is separation without contempt. Heat is distinct from holiness. They are not enemies, but neither is one a certificate for the other. You separate without shaming, the way a gardener separates water from wine and loves both for what they are. Your heart learns to say, I bless my desire, and I bless my direction, and I refuse to make them fight for custody of my future. People feel that decision as weather, clean, breathable, stable enough to stand beneath. Contrast appears again in your pace. Frenzy has been the liturgy of many rooms. It masquerades as passion and leaves behind a rash of regret. Your gait refuses that inheritance. You move with enough urgency to honor what matters, and enough patience to keep truth from breaking its ankle on your speed. It is disorienting at first for those trained in the cult of the whirlwind. They expect to be seduced by acceleration, and instead find themselves courted by clarity. This is the moment envy loses its footing. It wanted proof that your brightness was theft. It meets the news that your brightness is craftsmanship, made of rests and refusals, of starts that wait for integrity and stops that arrive before bitterness does. Envy has little to say to such arithmetic. Your mouth participates in the contrast by refusing to sell what it blesses. You can praise beauty without pricing it. You can name power without kneeling to it. You can speak of longing without turning any human being into a target. Often, your sentences are short, not because your mind is small, but because your conscience is large. A short, true sentence leaves room for someone else to breathe. A long, flattering one often lures them into a room with no exit. You choose the former, and the atmosphere changes. Lust, finding no purchase on your tone, loses volume. Respect, finding a chair, sits down. Touch becomes another theater of contrast. The world has been given touch that takes and calls it chemistry, touch that hides and calls it reverence, touch that bargains and calls it love. Your touch, of hands, of words, of choices, keeps covenant with consent in context. It is warm without predation, restrained without coldness, generous without debt. People feel the difference the way skin recognizes sunlight through a window versus a flame too near. The body, taught by pain to flinch, begins to trust again in your vicinity. Trust is the miracle that sacred contrast carries in its pockets. The contrast you carry is not a campaign against pleasure. It is a campaign against confusion. Pleasure in your house is a stewarded good, not a price paid for belonging. You enjoy the goodness of your form without submitting it to the auction block. You enjoy the goodness of attention without mortgaging tomorrow's peace to keep it coming. You enjoy the goodness of creativity without letting the marketplace baptize your soul in the acid of always more. Each enjoyment has a gate and a garden. Standing at those gates, you are both host and guard. You decide what enters and in what season, and this decision itself becomes a sermon heard by those who never listen to sermons. Sacred contrast does not need a microphone. It needs a keeper. Of course, contrast invites misreading. Some will call your restraint fear because their only category for power is consumption. Some will call your warmth naivete because their only category for boundaries is hardness. Some will call your slowness indifference because their only category for care is adrenaline. You will want to explain yourself to every room until the rooms can no longer misunderstand. Resist the urge. Let the fruit argue your case. The marriages that repair without spectacle, the teams that run on mercy and schedule instead of crisis and heroics, the young who learn to like their faces in quiet light, these are witnesses that cannot be cross-examined by cynicism. When outcomes repeat, interpretation adjusts. Sacred contrast also refuses to centralize you in what it accomplishes. You are not the destination. You are the difference that makes destinations visible. Your presence restores scale. It helps people feel how large God is without making them feel small, how strong desire is without making them feel doomed, how precious bodies are without making them feel priced. You do this with 1,000 small decisions that never trend. A door you close when laughter goes cruel, a meeting you shorten when fatigue would make honesty too expensive, a reply you delay until tenderness can supervise your truth. Over time, the sum of these small obediences becomes a corridor where strangers find they can walk upright again. In this month of unusual magnetism, contrast is your safety and your service. It keeps you from being swallowed by the crowd and keeps the crowd from being swallowed by its own appetites. You do not have to announce it, you simply have to remain it. And when night returns and mirrors dim, you ask the gentle inventory that makes the next day cleaner. Where did my brightness protect dignity instead of purchasing it? Where did my no keep love sweet? Where did my yes build something another can live in? Answer, repair, rest. The sacred contrast will wake with you and set the table again. Chosen ones, a standard is not another word for perfection. It is a trustworthy measure in a world of elastic rules. This month's mesmerizing grace has given you influence that could be spent on attention. Heaven is offering you a rarer exchange. Convert that influence into a standard others can use long after the voltage returns to its hum. To become a standard is to turn personal revelation into shared reliability, to let your private vows mature into public virtues that keep people whole. Standards begin small and local. They live first in the way you keep time and tell truth when nobody is checking. You start meetings when you said you would and end them before contempt can rise. You reply with clarity rather than charisma when a decision touches the future. You apologize with verbs, not violins, when your words wounded or your absence costs someone else their peace. You rest on schedule so your kindness does not come with an invoice. These are not performance notes, they are measurements. Your friends begin to predict safety around you. Your team begins to believe that policies are not punishments. Your own soul begins to trust your mouth. A standard becomes visible when it survives pressure. Words like consent, clean, enough, later, no have been your furniture this month. Now storms will test their joinery. An opportunity will arrive that flatters your image but erases your integrity. The measurement you keep in your pocket will help you say, not for me. A romance will rise that thrills your nerves but refuses your boundaries. The measurement will help you answer, not at this speed, not at this cost. A platform will beckon that multiplies your voice but would require you to trade accuracy for volume. The measurement will lower your hand. In each refusal, you are building a ruler others can borrow when their own hands shake. Standards must be legible to outlast a personality. Translate your convictions into practices people can see and copy. If you lead, write processes that defend tenderness before crisis makes tenderness feel optional. If you create, document the steps that kept your art honest so younger hands can inherit discipline without inheriting your mistakes. If you mentor, codify scripts for moments when fear usually rewrites the truth. How to decline cleanly, how to escalate kindly, how to end well. When your wisdom becomes language others can carry, you are no longer the only keeper of your flame. The world around you accumulates oil. A true standard requires counsel, not an entourage of admirers, but a circle of craftsmen who care more about accuracy than optics. Invite someone who tells you when your speed has begun to impersonate purpose. Invite someone who notices when your generosity is fueled by guilt instead of love. Invite someone younger who can see where your habits have hardened into habits that no longer serve the future you claim to want. Give them permission to measure you with the tool you are building for others. The humility to be measured keeps the measure true. Becoming the standard will change how you count. You will count fewer clicks and more recoveries. The afternoon someone chose to speak plainly because your culture made panic unnecessary. The morning a colleague went home on time because your deadlines were designed for humans. The night a young person kept their own boundary because your example removed the shame of doing so. This accounting is quieter and far sturdier. It will outlive your trending moments with a durability that spectacle cannot counterfeit. Let your standard bless places you do not control. Offer it to rooms that will never pay you. Share the template, the policy, the script, the prayer. Celebrate when it travels farther than you can. This is not self-erasure. It is multiplication.